Hi there, everyone, and welcome to the Daily Gardener, and thank you for listening. I'm your host, Jennifer Ebling. It's February 2nd, and there are 46 days to go until spring. Today, we celebrate a star from the silent film age whose best movie featured a blind woman selling flowers. We'll also learn about Candlemas today. It's an ancient celebration of the quickening of the year. Candlemas is associated with the snowdrop, candles, and predicting just how much longer winter will last. We'll hear a passage about a wonderful mini farm. It's an inspiring example of the nature principle at home. And we grow that garden library today with a book that teaches how to propagate almost 400 plants. And if you get it, I see many baby plants in your future. And then we'll wrap things up with the little story about the snowdrop fairy. It's very, very sweet. Now, if you want to subscribe to the Daily Gardener Friday newsletter, it's like getting a little email from me every single Friday, a letter from a garden friend. And if you want to do that, all you need to do is head on over to thedailygardener.org. It's thedailygardener.org. And then once you're there, you can sign up for the newsletter and you'll start to get one every single Friday. Here's today's curated news. Today's news comes from Fine Gardening, and the post was called 5 Tips to Help Your Garden Now. And I think this post has been around for a while. I couldn't find a date on the post, but I have to say, you know what? It really doesn't matter when you do these things, just as long as you hopefully get around to doing them, because they are such great tips. Now, the first one was especially meaningful to me because last year I essentially did this first tip, which is I created an outdoor potting bench, and I used this very thick wire mesh that they are recommending. They say put together plant tables. That's their suggestion. And then they show these great plant tables. Well, my son and I went and harvested some wood. There was a woman in town who was getting rid of some deck railing. It was made of cedar, and it's very difficult to get cedar wood right now during the pandemic. And so I think for, $40 or $50, something like that, we managed to get this deck railing, and we came home and we took it all apart and we put together basically a very large, I think it's 8 feet long, potting bench. It's an outdoor potting bench, and I absolutely love it. It created a little room for me under these beautiful white pines that we have on the east side of our property. And it's my happy place when I'm here. So I love that. But there are 4 other wonderful things that they suggest in this post, including they give a little tip for how you can revitalize rusty pruners, how to, there's a spray bottle hanger. So some of these things are very, very practical, very easy to do. Putting together the plant table might be a little bit more challenging. You're probably going to need somebody to help you put that together unless you're extremely handy. But in any case, this is a great little post from Fine Gardening. So if you want to check that out, all you need to do is head on over to the Facebook group for the show and type in the word tip. And this post is going to pop right up. And that way you don't have to hunt this thing down. It's right there. It's nice and handy for you. Now, if you're not in the Facebook group and you want to join, all you need to do is search for the words Daily Gardener Community, where you'd search for a friend. The next time you're in Facebook, just head on up there, type in Daily Gardener Community, and then request to join. I'd love to meet you in the group. Here's today's brevities. Today is the day that the English comic actor, filmmaker, and composer Charlie Chaplin made his debut film in Making a Living, and it happened on this day, February 2nd in 1914. With regard to his enormous catalog of work, Charlie's on-screen persona, the tramp, is considered iconic, and it brought him wealth and fame. In 1931, Charlie created the silent film that Roger Ebert regarded as his best, City Lights. And in this film, Charlie, as the tramp, falls in love with a blind flower girl. And here's some incredible movie trivia that I thought you guys would get a kick out of for the movie City Lights. There's a scene where the tramp bought a flower from the blind girl, and that scene had to have 342 takes. I kid you not. Why was that? Well, it was because Charlie could not figure out how to convey a key plot point, because the blind woman needed to know that the tramp, who didn't speak, he was mute, was wealthy. And so that needed to get conveyed to someone who was blind. And so somehow in all of those takes, he figured it out. But until he got that just right, the actress, who is named Virginia Sherrill, had to say the words, "Flower, sir?" 342 times. So there you go. I shared this post, by the way, in the Facebook group for the listeners. So if you want to check it out, all you have to do is head on over to the Facebook group today, and you'll see a clip of her recognizing the tramp, and it's very touching, but it's very sweet. And when you see him buying that flower, imagine that took 342 times. I can't even imagine it. I go crazy if I have to record a show 10 times. So 342 times, I think I'd have to give up podcasting. All right. And today is also Candlemas, which is a celebration of the quickening of the year, and it happens on February 2nd. And so while today we might say that we're halfway between Christmas and spring, this Celtic tradition honored the midpoint between the winter solstice and the spring equinox, and it was a forerunner to Groundhog Day. So before Groundhog Day, there was Candlemas. And like Groundhog Day, Candlemas was all about predicting when winter would come to an end. This has been sport for humans for a very long time. And this is why there are so many verses for Candlemas. There's so much poetry around this holiday. I'll give you a little sampling here. One says, "If Candlemas Day be mild and gay, go saddle your horses and buy them hay. But if Candlemas Day be stormy and black, it carries the winter away on its back." So I guess we should be hoping for bad weather today. Here's another one. "If Candlemas be fair and clear, there'll be 2 winters in the year." So I guess this isn't a good day to have a good day. And then finally, here's one. "If Candlemas Day be fair and bright, winter will have another flight. But if Candlemas Day be cloud and rain, then winter will not come again." Now, as for the garden, in the Middle Ages, your Christmas greenery could be left up until Candlemas, but then it needed to come down. So if you still have your Christmas decorations out, you should set a goal to be in step with the Middle Ages and get that all put away by today. And another interesting fact about Candlemas is that in England, the snowdrop blooms in February. And so this is how the snowdrop ends up with the common name Candlemas bells, or the Fair Maid of February. And you'll hear that term, Fair Maid of February, again a little bit later on in the show. But this is also how we end up with this little verse that goes like this. "The snowdrop in purest white array first rears its head on Candlemas Day." And if you were tempted to bring in some cut snowdrops into the house before Candlemas, you probably wouldn't have, because that was considered bad luck. So if we would have had an unusually warm winter and the beautiful snowdrops had started popping up in January, you would have just let them be so that you would not get bad luck. And it should be noted that snowdrops are a lot stronger than we give them credit for. And the same goes for a lot of our spring flowering bulbs. They contain a natural antifreeze, and that's what helps them survive in freezing weather. So think about your pansies, same way that you think about your snowdrops. Now, over the centuries, the forecast of Candlemas was shared differently across Europe. In France and England, a bear would tell the forecast. The Germans look to the badger for signs of spring. But when the German immigrants came to Pennsylvania, they were looking to maintain the custom, and they turned to the groundhog, a creature unlike the badger that was relatively easy to find and also easy to catch. So that was great. So in the United States, the very first Groundhog Day was celebrated in Gobbler's Knob, Pennsylvania, on this day in 1887. And today, the mother of all groundhog celebrations is held in Punxsutawney, with the groundhog Punxsutawney Phil, the star attraction. So if you're looking to celebrate Candlemas today, you can always light a candle in your garden, do this in the evening, and then invite spring, and then say a little prayer or a little mantra to yourself, inviting spring and the sunshine back into your life. And then when you get back in the house, you can turn on the movie Groundhog Day. That's our tradition here. All right, it's time for Unearthed Words. Today's unearthed words are from Richard Louv, the American author and Audubon Medal winner, from his book, The Nature Principle, one of my favorite books. And this is a little excerpt from his chapter called The Nature Principle at Home. And I thought of you right away when I read this because I know so many of you are gardening on many farms. So here you go. The yard surrounding Karen Harwell's home is only 600 square feet, yet it harbors ducks, a beehive, 18 semi-dwarf fruit trees, an organic vegetable garden, calming places to sit and read and think, and neighborhood teenagers. The teens visit Summer, the dog, and sit in the rabbit hutch, hold the baby rabbits, and conduct that archaic form of social networking. Talk. I wake up in the morning and I throw on my vest over my nightgown, and then Summer and I head out the front door and we just walk around the garden noticing things. It's such a wonderful way to start the day. This is what Karen Harwell said as she escorted the author of The Nature Principle around her mini farm. Isn't that great? It's time to grow that garden library with today's book, How to Propagate 375 Plants by Richard Rosenfeld. This book came out in 2018, and the subtitle is A Practical Guide to Propagating Your Own Flowers, Foliage Plants, Trees, Shrubs, Climbers, Wet-Loving Plants, Bog and Water Plants, Vegetables, and Herbs. So bottom line, Richard has got you covered when it comes to propagation. In this book, Richard gives us a masterclass in propagation. And in addition to covering seed planting basics, Richard shows you the proper way to take cuttings so that you don't hurt the parent plant and that you end up having a cutting that gives you the best chance at propagation success. And then Richard guides you through dividing plants as well as layering and grafting methods. Best of all, everything is thoroughly explained. There are step-by-step instructions and photographs. And the directory of 375 plants that are listed in Richard's book includes growing tips for each of these species. This book is 256 pages of a propagation masterclass with sound advice, beautiful photography, and best of all, these propagation skills can be put to use right away in your garden this year. You can get a copy of How to Propagate 375 Plants by Richard Rosenfeld and support the show using the Amazon link in today's show notes for around $18. Finally, here's something sweet to revive the little botanic spark in your heart. Today, I thought I'd end the show with a little whimsy. The English illustrator Cicely Mary Barker painted a flower fairy for the fair maids of February, the snowdrops, and she called it the Snowdrop Fairy. Cicely loved wildflowers, but she didn't believe in fairies. And in the foreword to Flower Fairies of the Wayside, the book that she wrote, Cicely said, "I have drawn all the plants and flowers carefully from real ones, but I have never seen a fairy." Today, Cicely is remembered for her depictions of fairies and flowers. They're adorable. In Cicely's fabulous fantasy world, every flower was granted its particular fairy to protect it from harm. Cicely would draw the flowers and the fairies and then write poetry about them. It's a magical combination that to this day still pierces the heart of many gardeners. And there's a lovely website that I found that I thought you might enjoy. It's called Flower Fairies, and I shared it in the Facebook group for the show, so you can find it there. And it has organized Cicely's fairies by season. So for winter, there are a number of fairies. In fact, I was surprised just how many Cicely had drawn for winter. So I'm going to share those with you here. And then I'm going to tell you what Cicely wrote about the Snowdrop Fairy. But these are all the different fairies that Cicely had created for winter. There's the Snowdrop, the Groundsel, Dead Nettle, the Shepherd's Purse Fairy, the Spindleberry Fairy. She featured Old Man's Beard, Yew, Lords and Ladies, Holly, Blackthorn, Pine Tree and Box Tree, Rushgrass and Cotton Grass, the Plane Tree, Burdock, great plant, Winter Jasmine, the Hazel Catkin, Tottergrass, Winter Aconite, and finally, of course, the Christmas tree. You can see all of these magnificent fairies. If you heard one that caught your attention, you could head on over to that website. You can see them all over on the website called Flower Fairies. I put a link to it in today's show notes, so you can see that over on the website for the show over at thedailygardener.org, or you can just track it down in the Facebook group for the show. Type in the word fairies, plural, fairies, and this post will pop up and you can check it all out for yourself. Quite frankly, when I saw this, I thought, my goodness, if you just even printed out these beautiful images, you could have an amazing art gallery of these beautiful flower fairies to display in your home. So think about that if you're looking for a little refresh. In any case, here's what Cicely wrote about the Snowdrop Fairy. This is how we'll end the show for today on Candlemas. Deep sleeps the winter, cold, wet, and gray. Surely all the world is dead. Spring is far away. Wait, the world shall waken. It is not dead, for lo, the fair maids of February stand in the snow. Thanks for listening to The Daily Gardener. And remember, for a happy, healthy life, garden every day. The Daily Gardener is produced in lovely Wyoming, Minnesota with the help of Paige Mance, Brooke Bierbaum, Kiana Rayleigh, Maddie Doyle, Natalie Decker, and Eric Begay. You can find The Daily Gardener on all your favorite social media. You can follow the show on Instagram, and listeners always have a standing invitation to join the free Facebook group for the show. Just search for Daily Gardener Community the next time you're on Facebook and request to join. All the stories and books that are featured on the show can be found over at thedailygardener.org, thedailygardener.org. And while you're there, be sure to sign up for my free Friday newsletter. Last but not least, you can share your own gardener greetings on the show by emailing me at jennifer@thedailygardener.org. I'm your host, Jennifer Ebling, and as always, have a great day in the garden, and we'll see you tomorrow. Today, I thought I'd end the show with a little whimsy. The English illustrator Cicely Mary Barker painted... Start that again.